A+ teacher.
Shakespeare. You know the name, right? Of course you do. We've all probably read one of his plays. But who was the actual guy behind the legend? I mean, was he just this literary genius, or was there more to it? Was he a businessman? A husband? Maybe even a bit of a troublemaker? Well, let's get into it. Let's really uncover the story of the man from Stratford-upon-Avon. Okay, so to really get a grip on his legacy, you have to start with the sheer scale of it. Look at this number, 4 billion. That's the estimated number of his books sold around the world. It's a number that's just so huge, it's hard to even wrap your head around, you know? It basically puts him in a league of his very own. And it's not just books, not by a long shot. We're talking over 400 feature films based on his plays. His work has been translated into more than 118 languages, so it's reached pretty much every corner of the planet. The point is this: 400 years after he died, he's not some dusty historical figure. He is a living, breathing part of our global culture, right now.
But, every legend starts somewhere. So to really understand the writer, we've got to go back, way back to the beginning, to a little market town in England called Stratford-upon-Avon.
So what's wild about his early life is just how normal it seems. He was born back in 1564. His dad, John, was a glove maker, a pretty respected guy in town, even a local official. His mom, Mary, she came from a local farming family. He went to the local grammar school, got a good education in Latin and Greek, but seriously, on the surface, there was absolutely nothing that screamed future literary genius.
Okay, and here's where things get a little spicy. In 1582, William is just 18 years old, and he marries Anne Hathaway, who's 26. Now, the records show this was a very rushed wedding. They even shortened the usual church announcements. Why the hurry? Well, just 6 months later, their first kid, Susanna, is born. And you have to remember, this was an era where that was a huge deal. It tells a very human story, right? All about passion and pressure. Basically, the kind of high-stakes, real-life drama he'd end up writing about for the rest of his career.
And it wasn't just personal drama, there was real political and religious danger, too. See, Elizabethan England was fiercely Protestant. Being a Catholic was not just frowned upon, it could get you into a world of trouble. And there's evidence, like this Catholic pamphlet found hidden in the rafters of his childhood home, that suggests his family might have been practicing their faith in secret. Imagine living in a world of hidden beliefs, of constant tension. It's no wonder that became such a powerful theme in his plays.
So, like a lot of ambitious young people then and now, Shakespeare eventually did what they all do. He left his small town. He even left his family behind for a while and headed for the big city. He went to London to make a name for himself, to chase his fortune in the booming theater scene.
Now, his rise to fame wasn't overnight. He started out in the late 1580s, working as an actor and a writer. Then, disaster hits. In 1593, the bubonic plague sweeps through London, and boom, all the theaters are shut down. But this moment is absolutely crucial. Instead of just packing it in, he pivots. He uses that downtime to write poetry, to write his famous sonnets. And it works. By 1603, his theater company is so successful that the new king, James I, gives them the royal seal of approval. They become the king's men.
And his output? It was just incredible. Over his whole career, scholars count something like 42 plays. We're talking comedies, tragedies, histories, the whole shebang, plus 154 sonnets. This wasn't just some flash of genius. This was a hard-working professional, a prolific writer who was absolutely at the top of his game.
So where did all this magic actually happen? I mean, to really get Shakespeare, you have to imagine the place where his words came alive. We're talking about the most famous theater in history, the Globe. And trust me, watching a play back then was, well, it was nothing like going to the theater today.
Here it is, the legendary Globe Theater, built in 1599. And its location was super important. It was built on the south bank of the river, which was just outside the official city limits. And that was totally on purpose. It meant they didn't have to deal with the stuffy city officials. A lot of them thought theater was immoral. This was London's entertainment district, the place you went for a good time.
So what was it like to go to the Globe? Well, it really depended on how much money you had. If you were poor, you were a groundling. You'd pay the cheapest price to stand in the open-air yard right in front of the stage, totally exposed to the weather. But the rich folks, they sat on benches up in the covered galleries. You could even hire a cushion for extra comfort. The theater was literally a perfect map of society. And here's the brilliant part. Shakespeare wrote for all of them. He'd pack his plays with beautiful poetry for the rich folks and then throw in a dirty joke for the groundlings, sometimes in the very same scene.
Yeah, so forget everything you know about quiet, polite audiences. This was a rowdy, loud, messy affair. You'd have up to 3,000 people crammed in there, drinking beer, munching on nuts, and just shouting at the actors. They'd heckle the villains, they'd cheer for the heroes. It was totally interactive, chaotic, and just buzzing with energy. I mean, actual fights would break out sometimes.
And what about the actors? Well, their life was intense. They had to learn new roles at a crazy fast pace. And get this, to save money on paper, they didn't even get the full script. They just got their own lines with the cue word from the previous actor. That's it. And of course, the most famous part, all the roles, I mean all of them, from Juliet to Lady Macbeth, were played by men and young boys. Women just weren't allowed on the professional stage back then.
The audience didn't just want words, though. They wanted a show. They craved spectacle. They wanted thunder and lightning. They wanted ghosts rising from trapdoors. So the company used all kinds of special effects, including one that turned out to be incredibly dangerous. Actual cannons, loaded with gunpowder, just to make a loud bang.
And that, of course, brings us to this insane moment in 1613. It's during a performance of his play Henry VIII. A cannon is fired for a special effect. A hot spark shoots up and lands right on the thatched roof. And within a couple of hours, the entire Globe Theater, the home of all his greatest plays, burned completely to the ground. You couldn't make it up. A totally theatrical end for a theater.
So after the fire, and after all those decades of hustling in London, Shakespeare's story starts to come full circle. He was ready for his final act. And for him, that meant leaving the big city and heading back home.
And he didn't go back as the glovemaker's son. No, he returned as a rich and successful gentleman. He'd been smart with his money, invested it well, and he bought New Place, one of the biggest, fanciest houses in all of Stratford. This wasn't just a house to retire in, it was a statement. It was a big, visible symbol that the local boy had gone off and made it big.
So he settles into retirement around 1613. And then comes this coincidence that just feels, well, it feels like something he would have written. He died on April 23rd, 1616. Why is that a big deal? Because that's the very same date that we celebrate as his birthday. He was 52.
He was buried in Holy Trinity Church, right there in Stratford. You can still go see his grave today. And on that simple stone slab over his tomb, he left the world one final and honestly kind of chilling piece of writing. This is what's carved on his tombstone. It's a warning, and it's aimed at anyone who might try to move his body, which, by the way, was pretty common back then to make space for new graves. It says, "Blessed be the man that spares these stones, and cursed be he that moves my bones." Pretty direct, right?
So, what do you make of that? Is it just a poet's final words trying to make sure he rests in peace? Or is it a real curse? A curse so powerful that for more than 400 years, nobody has dared to touch his grave. It's the perfect final mystery from a man whose life and whose words are still captivating us all this time later.